So there's an ancient teaching that says the part of yourself that remains unseen controls your life. Ancients knew this, mystics knew this, and initiates were trained in this. And what it is known as is the shadow. So it's not known as the shadow because it was evil, but because it was hidden, cloaked in darkness, not from the world, but actually from yourself. It is the shadow part of you. See, in nearly every ancient tradition, whether it's Egyptian mysticism to Gnostic texts, from Hermetic philosophy to Eastern inner alchemy, there is a consistent thread. If you want to create, if you want to command reality, you have to make the unconscious conscious. You have to face what's being buried. You have to essentially face your shadow, and not face it with surface level affirmations or with spiritual bypassing that aims to avoid it, but through actually acknowledging that it's there. Because the simulation, this living mirror that we call reality, doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to who you are. And the truth is, you're not just reflecting the parts of you that you've accepted. You're projecting outwards the parts of you that you've rejected, the ones you've tried to exile, the ones that you may be afraid to face. And it is that exiled or rejected part of you that is shaping so much of your reality. So if you've ever felt like something is off, if you've ever been doing the quote-unquote right things, but your external world keeps showing you the same loops, same stuck patterns, the same weird resistance, this is why. The shadow is not something to be pushed down or ignored. It is something to be integrated. It is something for you to shine the light of awareness on. And until you face it, until you really face it, you will not be the one that is in control. And as a result, your reality will never be as you would like it to be. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through why shadow work is the missing piece to true reality creation, and how the moment you start integrating it, the simulation begins to shift. So let's jump into it. So we already talked a little bit in that intro why we want to do shadow work. So much of that unconscious part of you that you're not actively looking at shapes your reality. But one way I want you to picture this that can make it very easy or easier to visualize is this idea of energetic anchors. And what I want you to imagine is you are suspended in water, right? You're in this kind of middle suspension of this water. You can breathe underwater in this analogy, so don't worry. But towards the surface or higher up are the higher energies, the higher emotions, or the higher levels of consciousness, right? Love and peace and joy and gratitude and abundance, and these things that when you are in these states obviously bring about the equivalent physically. So people in these higher states typically live much more fulfilling lives because they get the equivalent of love in their life, the equivalent of abundance, etc., etc. Now, towards the depths in this analogy is more the lower energies, the lower levels of consciousness, the guilt, the shame, the apathy, the fear, pride even, at all different levels towards the depths. And what you can imagine is you are suspended in this water, and if you don't have any encumbrances, if you don't have anything weighing you down, what would naturally happen? You would naturally float towards the top of the surface and experience that joy, peace, gratitude, similar emotions, and levels of consciousness that would result in you having the equivalent of those things physically in your life. However, as we can see, most people are not experiencing that because they have what's called energetic anchors that are weighing them down more towards the depths rather than the surface. Now, if we do not release these energetic anchors, there will always be limitations and restrictions to how high you can rise. Because even if you were to say start frantically swimming up towards the surface, you're doing positive things, all these tools and techniques, unless you clear the anchors, as soon as you stop swimming, which is also going to be harder because you have these things weighing you down. So you're going to get tired, you're going to get overwhelmed, and eventually it's just going to pull you right back down to wherever you were before, or even worse, as you were struggling to go up, you may have picked up additional anchors, so you go back down even further. And so the solution isn't always, I need to add things and do things and etc., etc. It's to look down and go, I have all these anchors weighing me down. Let me release the anchors, and what will naturally start to happen? You will naturally start to rise. If you've ever heard of the idea that you are naturally high vibration at AF, that you are actually in your true essence, in your true nature, very high frequency, very high vibration. This is kind of a play on that, where if we just remove whatever it is you've picked up, the traumas, the negative emotions that stay within you, by the way, in your energetic field, essentially the shadow and what is being contained in the shadow or put in your shadow, if we can integrate and release that, which is represented by the anchors here, you will naturally start to float up to these higher frequencies. You won't even really have to do anything. Is there things you can do to amplify it? Absolutely. Are there things you can do to put the equivalent of a propeller on your back and go up quicker? Absolutely. But again, if you have those weights attached to your body, it will continually pull you down to the depths where those emotions like fear, apathy, guilt, and shame, grief, and these things exist. Essentially, what shadow work allows us to do is release these anchors so that we can more naturally float up towards the higher levels of emotion and consciousness. And if you've been paying attention on this channel, you'll know that the outer world follows the inner world. So the more you can exist in those higher levels of energy and consciousness, the more your physical world will start to change in order to reflect those energies. But again, most people are dwelling in the depths when it comes to their inner world. They are thinking from the depths when it comes to their inner world. They're feeling from that place and therefore seeing the reflection of what they're sending out from that place in their physical life. And so shadow work becomes so important because without removing these anchors or releasing this or doing the shadow work, it becomes near impossible in order to get to these higher levels of consciousness, because you will always have these things weighing you down. Even if you have moments when you're up there, it'll continue to pull you back down towards the depths because you have this weight, these energetic anchors, these energies and thoughts and feelings within you. They haven't gone anywhere. They're still stuck in you, weighing you down. And so this video will be all about helping you release these anchors. And I'm telling you, miracles can happen when you start to do this. You know, we've worked through with clients going over some advanced shadow work techniques in our program Maxit, which you can learn more about down below, where they've removed some of these anchors and it's completely opened up things in their life where manifestations have come through opportunities because they naturally went to those higher frequencies and again started receiving the physical equivalent. It really can be a magical process because for many people, what's preventing them from getting to where they want to go are these anchors because they keep pulling them down, they keep reducing their frequency and energy to where they can't access those things at an energetic level that they want in their life. And if you can't access it energetically and mentally, you will never get it physically. Okay, so now that you have a little more information on why this is so crucial to do, we'll move into how to do it. And again, this is not the easy, sparkly rainbows and sunshine part of manifestation, but it is one of the biggest impactful things, looking in the mirror and actually acknowledging the shadow, the things we've made ourselves feel guilty for, the things we do feel guilty for, the things, these anchors that we've just tried to put out of mind and put out of sight, thinking that we'll get rid of them, but it hasn't, right? And so when we can actually address this, acknowledge this, release or integrate these anchors, everything begins to change. So the first thing I want to talk about is simply forgiveness. And forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, allows you to melt these anchors away like no other. Now, we will also go over a slightly more advanced tool a little bit later, but I also want to give you a very simple tool you can use with forgiveness to start releasing some of these anchors immediately. A lot of what people have in their shadow are emotions like shame and guilt, apathy, maybe grief, these kinds of very, very heavy emotions. And if we were to look at Hawking's consciousness map, we would see that shame and guilt are actually the two lowest emotions that we can experience. Grief is not that far behind. Apathy is down there as well. And so a lot of people have shame and guilt within the shadow. And a lot of it is directed at themselves. They feel that they themselves are to blame for certain things. They blame themselves for certain things or have learned to blame themselves for certain things and now feel incredibly guilty. And you're taking that guilt everywhere you go. Again, that anchor is keeping you down from being able to access your divine right, these higher levels of consciousness. And so forgiveness is a beautiful thing that we can do, starting with self-forgiveness to release these anchors. And so the first thing we can do is just acknowledge anything, absolutely anything and everything that we have been beating ourselves up over. Now, if you want, you can actually write these things out and just ask, what have I been beating myself up over? Again, this is a very important step, even though it might be a little bit hard to do because most people are just on autopilot going through the day. These things are absolutely there and they're unconsciously beating themselves up over these things and then feeling the effect of that, which is the emotion or the thoughts or whatever else, the lack of motivation. But they're never actually becoming aware of what am I beating myself up over? What events, what things, what experiences? And so by just acknowledging them, you may even often find that you get some releases just from shining the light on whatever these things are. And again, there might be some things you didn't even realize you were blaming yourself for, because you might look at it and go, why would I logically blame myself for this? But it doesn't matter. This isn't about logic. This is about releasing and freeing yourself from these anchors. So whatever comes up, write these things down. And then we're going to go over how to start releasing them. But shine the light first on anything that comes up for you. That you believe you've been beating yourself up for. Anything, it doesn't matter how big or small. Get a list of those things and start, again, acknowledging and becoming aware. And so a very powerful way in which you can do this, to start forgiving yourself and releasing these things, is to start out loud acknowledging and forgiving. Now, if you want to make this even more powerful, look at yourself in the mirror as you do this. And one thing this will help with is help you to really connect to this and even become a little emotional. Understand that when you're doing these practices, if there are tears, if there are yawns is another common one, coughing, kind of these physical releases, then it's a good sign that you've actually started releasing some anchors. Because remember the principle of correspondence, as above, so below. The yawning, the tears, the sneezing, the coughing, or even like, these other physical manifestations is the releasing process manifesting itself physically, corresponding to what's happening emotionally. So when you have a release, you also cry physical tears, or you yawn, or et cetera, et cetera. So, with my clients, when we do something called TFT, a lot of times they'll be yawning. Obviously, sometimes there'll be tears. This is a good sign. So what I'm getting at is if this happens, I would recommend you don't hold it back. Don't try and suppress it. Now you're trying to suppress the physical manifestation of this emotion and you're pushing it down once again, right? So if you have to yawn, if you have to cough, if you have to sneeze, or if it's tears or whatever else it is, you get the shakes, like a little woof, just like some energy releasing. Allow yourself to do it as you go through this process. And so you're going to look in the mirror, look into your eyes the best you can, and just say that I forgive myself for, and start going down the list and truly connecting to it. Say that you forgive yourself and that you also love yourself. Give yourself that space to do this. And I'm also going to give you a script or formula that you can use to make this even more effective. Now, to make this even more effective, you can actually tap a certain part in your body that is connected to the heart meridian, which is one of the most powerful places to activate when it comes to forgiveness. A lot of times these will be blocks of the heart accessing the heart center that's right up here. And what you can do, and hopefully this won't mess up my audio, is to tap what's known as the pinky meridian. Now the pinky meridian, it's right, if you're holding up, you see the kind of the back of my hand, and you're holding up your pinky this way, so it's facing out, the nail is facing out like this. Right where that nail and flesh meets is the spot you want to tap. You don't have to do it really hard, you just have to give it a nice light tap. And by tapping this point, you are activating the heart meridian. This is going to open up your heart more. It's going to allow the energy to flow more. It's going to allow you to release more powerfully. And you're simply going to say the following for each of the things that you believe you're beating yourself up for. Anything that's in there that you feel you need to give forgiveness for to yourself. And you're simply going to say, while continually tapping this pinky meridian, I forgive myself for, and then whatever it is that you need to forgive yourself for. And then you're going to say, because, and in this because section, you're going to give yourself a reason for compassion or understanding. So let's say, for example, something happened when you were a kid and you've been beating yourself up for it and you're just discovering that that's the case. You would say, I forgive myself for whatever that event is. And you could say, because, I was just a kid. I didn't know any better. I wasn't aware of the consequences of that. I wasn't aware of the effects. I was just doing my best. Right? And you can find intuitively what feels right for you to say in that moment. And you'll usually feel some sort of release. Again, you don't have to force this. You just allow it to unfold as it will. But you can keep going down the list for as long as you want to do this. You don't have to do this all at once. You can do 3 at a time, come back later, allow yourself to shake it off, come back another day. But this is going to be incredibly powerful because perhaps for the first time in your life, you're acknowledging these things in the shadow that, by the way, just want to be seen. These are rejected parts of yourself that just want to have existed. They just want to be seen. They want the light shown on them. And what you'll find is once you do this, they're given permission to be released. And this anchor will drop. And so much energy will also be given back to you as you begin to rise. A lot of people will say that once they've done this, they feel more energized. Yeah, because the anchor's been released and you've gone to the higher levels. You started floating up where higher levels of energy exist. And so do this again, for yourself. And the second part to this technique is then to forgive anyone else that you feel like you need to forgive. Now, this is where people struggle a lot more. Because people beat themselves up a lot, they usually don't have as much of an issue forgiving themselves once they go to this practice. But then when it comes to someone else they believe has screwed them over or done a lot of damage to them or whatever else, maybe justifiably so, that they feel this way, right? They have a lot more blocks. But it is crucial that you also do this for anyone else, right? You can do this for similar situations. So let's say you forgave yourself for something, but you also, when it comes to that event, feel animosity towards someone else, forgiving them as well, giving a reason of understanding. And there's an important reason to do this. You know, one of my favorite sayings from the Toltec, so if you've read the 4 agreements or the 5th agreement, this is Toltec wisdom. And one of the things they'll say about essentially kind of blaming or criticizing others is it's the equivalent of drinking a vial of poison expecting them to drop dead. Again, the only thing this is doing is hurting yourself. And so you don't even need to do this because you're validating the behavior of the other person. You're doing this to release the energy for yourself. This is for your benefit, right? It's not for anything with them. This is just kind of the event that happened. It's allowing you to move on. It's allowing you to move forward. And so you would do the same thing, except you would change the script now to I forgive whoever it is, my mom, my dad, you know, Jessica, whoever it is, for whatever the thing was, because, again, a reason of understanding and compassion. And you might get stuck at this part, but again, I would really ask you to do your best to really feel that out and to really have some understanding and compassion to raise your energy to a point where you can go beyond whatever the vitriol is, whatever the anger is, or whatever else that is. And again, you're going to feel better for doing so. And this anchor that has been attached to you from that situation, maybe for a long time, will start to be released if you do this. Now, this is very powerful, using this forgiveness technique, very simple. Again, looking in the mirror and doing this and mixing that script with the tapping the pinky meridian or the heart meridian through the pinky point. It's very, very powerful, and I would recommend doing it anytime you feel the need to forgive. This will prevent you from adding more and more to your shadow and help you release what's there and prevent more energetic anchors. So even after you've done this a bit and you feel more light in general, to prevent accumulation of more anchors, which will just happen as you go throughout your day. You know, maybe someone cuts you off and you're angry at them. Again, you can simply do this later in the day, even in that moment if you can, to forgive them and not allow this anchor to turn into something bigger. A lot of the big anchors we have, by the way, are things that were actually sometimes very small, not always, but something that was a small thing that has festered and gained energy over time into a much bigger anchor. Where if we had cut it off or done this right in that moment, then it would have been a very simple release. It would have taken you about 2 seconds or 30 seconds or whatever to release whatever that is. But through years of, again, hiding it in the shadow, pushing it down, it has accumulated energy, it has gained traction and power, and has become a bigger anchor. And so we can prevent these anchors from also forming or becoming this big deal in the shadow by, when these things are happening, or at least the same day, or at least soon after it, clearing it so that it doesn't become this big thing that it doesn't need to become. Now, speaking of this next part, I want to go over that a little bit more, because is there a way to prevent yourself from picking up new anchors? Absolutely. Like I mentioned, you can do it in the moment. And I want you to especially pay attention to times when you are triggered. As I believe it was Wayne Dyer or someone said, it might not have been Wayne Dyer, but essentially I remember someone saying, and it really stuck with me, you can only be triggered if you're loaded. And what that means is if there's an anchor there and then there's something that connects to that anchor, you're going to get triggered. Right? And so we can only be triggered if we're loaded. And I want you to start seeing those moments when you're triggered as almost like a gift that is letting you know that there is an energetic anchor within you. There's a part of your shadow that whatever this thing is connecting to, and almost revealing to you the thing that you need to clear that's going to help you move forward. And so as you're going through the day, notice, where are these triggers? Where are the things I'm being triggered by? Those are connecting to parts of your shadow. Those are connecting to an anchor that is absolutely holding you down and preventing you from getting to where you want to go. Again, these higher levels, the life you want to live. And so start seeing it, if you can, as a blessing. If you can't see it as a blessing just yet, don't worry. Just embrace it instead and go, okay, this is frustrating and this is getting me a little angry, but now I know that I have a trigger towards this. I can start working to clear this. Do I need to forgive something? Can I use another shadow work technique to release this? Especially notice your consistent triggers. Are there certain things that pop up time and time again? Again, this is a feedback mechanism from life, almost handing you on a silver platter the thing you need to do to move forward in your life. The problem is so many of us have been conditioned to believe that we should victimize ourselves through these triggers instead of using them as the feedback mechanism they were created for, going, hey, you keep getting triggered, you're loaded somewhere because of this. There's some, anchor that is activated. Wouldn't you much rather just cut away that anchor so this doesn't keep happening? We're literally letting you see where this is and what this is so that you can release it and move on from it and shine that light of awareness on whatever that is. Now, there is something else that you can do, which is going to help you to stop picking up new anchors. And it will help you to stop being reactionary. Now, if you notice that you have a constant trigger, again, my recommendation would be to release it if something keeps coming up time and time again. But let's go over how you can start preventing yourself from picking up new ones. Now, you can actually do this for anchors that are already there, and it will reduce the energy of the anchor. And this is simply called the art gallery metaphor. And so what I want you to imagine is you're in this art gallery, this universal art gallery, right? And within this museum or whatever the actual building is, this huge art gallery, every single kind of art that represents every single kind of thing exists. And what most people do when it comes to this art gallery is they're looking at a painting on the wall in the art gallery room and they don't like it. And instead of just looking at something else that they would prefer to like, they're screaming at the artwork. They're telling the art curator, you need to change this. They're trying to alter it. But you can't change any of the art that's there. It's all allowed to exist. It's all allowed to be there. And if you were in a real art gallery and tried to do that, like destroy it, you'd be kicked out. And so you have no right to change anything in the art gallery. But you have every right to move into a different room to the artwork that you enjoy and start looking at that artwork. And so one of the quotes or one of the sayings out of this that I want you to keep in mind is to choose, don't change. When things come up, instead of getting absorbed into it, change or choose something different, right? So if you're in an art gallery room where there's Da Vinci and you don't like Da Vinci, you're like, this is disgusting, this is horrible. Don't complain about it, because complaining about your current circumstances is the glue that keeps you stuck to them. Instead, let's say you love Picasso, you go into the room that has the Picassos. This is how you start growing more of what you want in your life, because what you give your attention to will grow. And so this is another way you can start cutting off the energy to the anchors. Start becoming responsive rather than reactive. The one who's reactive wants to change the artwork, the thing that's happening in their physical world. The one who is responsive catches themselves and focuses on something different. Another way to put it is, if you're in the buffet of life and there's this universal buffet and everything exists in the buffet, most people who are complaining about their current circumstances are eating something in the buffet and they're saying that it's disgusting, but they keep eating it. They're complaining to the chef who, with this section of the buffet, it's just their job to cook whatever's there. You could easily move up the buffet and eat something else, but they're still just eating the same thing, complaining about it. Instead of doing that, move further up the buffet and start trying something that you think you'll enjoy. Start putting your attention on something else. And one thing I will tell you, and this is great at releasing anchors as well to get into this habit, the anchor can only exist if energy is being given to it. Now, when you're getting triggered all the time by it, we need to use the forgiveness technique and something else, because it keeps coming back into your attention. But the more you give something your attention, the more it's created and builds in your life. And so if you do not react to the artwork and you're like, I don't like this is not my cup of tea, I'm going to look at something different, then you cut off the energy to that artwork that you were viewing. And therefore it cannot proliferate or expand in your life. And so keep in mind the idea of choose, don't change. And also to release these anchors as well that keep coming up for you as well through the forgiveness technique and through other techniques we've gone over in similar videos. Now, one of the reasons we want to even engage in shadow work is something called the mirror principle. And when you understand the mirror principle at a deeper level, you'll see again why the shadow work is so crucial. Because you'll start to understand one of the prime or main principles of the universe. And I go over what that is in here and the effects it's having. And once you watch this, you're going to want to do the shadow work a lot more, because you'll see what a profound effect doing the shadow work will have in correspondence or combined with the mirror principle.